Imagine being handed a golden ticket, not to a dream, but to your own public execution. A front row seat to your own character assassination, designed by the very people who spit on you every day. That's the twisted reality that slapped Sarah across the face. A 48-year-old janitor, a ghost in the machine of a multi-billion-dollar tech giant, so invisible she was practically part of the goddamn architecture. The invitation felt like a sick joke, a ticket to the wedding of the titan of industry, Marcus Thorne, and the most venomous, arrogant viper of a woman she'd ever had the displeasure of cleaning up after. But what Sarah didn't know was that this pristine, cream-colored card was a loaded gun, a meticulously crafted trap designed to tear her down in front of the city's elite. But fate, oh, that beautiful, unpredictable bastard, has a way of rewriting the script when you least expect it. And on that day, at that very wedding, the woman they cast as the court jester was about to walk in and burn the whole goddamn kingdom to the ground. What happened next? Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw it coming. Before we dive into this insane story, I have to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city, your state, your country in the comments below. And if you believe in the underdog, do me a solid and smash that like button and subscribe, because you are not going to want to miss a single second of this. Let's get into it. The sound of $1,000 heels was a constant drumbeat against the polished Italian marble, so flawless it mirrored the galaxy of crystal chandeliers dangling from the vaulted ceiling. Outside, a silent ballet of black sedans, Rolls-Royces, and Teslas delivered the city's most powerful players to the grand entrance of Thorne Industries Tower. Inside this cathedral of commerce, wealth wasn't just a number in a bank account. It was a language, a uniform, a weapon. Men and women in tailored suits, looking like they were sculpted from steel and ambition, moved with a predatory grace, their voices low as they closed deals worth more than a small country's GDP. Everyone here belonged, everyone except her. Sarah, her hands shielded by worn-out latex gloves, pushed her squeaking cleaning cart through the human current, her head perpetually bowed, but her spine ramrod straight. At 48, her face was a roadmap of a life lived on the front lines of survival. Her hands, though, told the real story, of scrubbing away the sins of the rich, of sacrifice, and of a resilience forged in fire. She knew every inch of this building, every secret stain on the plush carpets, every fingerprint on the glass partitions, every ghost of a whisper that clung to the air in the boardrooms after the giants had left. As she always grimly reminded herself, when you're invisible, you see and hear everything. But there was one person in this gleaming tower who made it her personal mission to ensure Sarah never forgot her place. Victoria Davenport, soon to be Victoria Thorne. Young, surgically beautiful, and born into a fortress of old money, she moved through the halls with the entitlement of a queen, surveying a kingdom she found deeply disappointing. Always draped in the latest runway fashion, her makeup a mask of perfection, and a smile so cold it could give you frostbite. "Careful with that mop, Sarah," Victoria had sneered just last week, flicking a strand of her platinum blonde hair over her shoulder. "This floor was imported from a quarry in Tuscany. It costs more than your entire pathetic existence." Sarah swallowed the acid of the insult, just as she did every day. It was a familiar taste. She couldn't afford the luxury of pride. Her rent, her bills, her sheer survival didn't give a damn about her dignity. But today, the venom in Victoria's gaze was different. It was sharper, colder, and laced with a cruel, celebratory excitement. Sarah saw her approaching from across the sprawling lobby, a predator closing in, flanked by her two giggling, equally vapid ladies-in-waiting. Victoria was clutching a small, cream-colored envelope in her perfectly manicured hand, her heels clicking a dramatic, purposeful rhythm on the marble. As was her habit, her survival instinct, Sarah lowered her gaze and began to steer her cart to the side, melting back into the shadows. She had no way of knowing that this moment, this simple, cruel interaction, was the tripwire that would detonate her entire life. "Well, well, look what the cat dragged in." Victoria's voice dripped with saccharine poison. She crossed her arms, that signature smirk playing on her lips, a smile that was less about happiness and more about asserting dominance. Her friends exchanged predatory glances, their mouths twitching as they suppressed their laughter. Sarah's grip tightened on the handle of her cart, her knuckles turning white. She knew this routine. Whenever Victoria approached her with that look in her eyes, a storm of humiliation was about to break. "Been keeping a low profile, Sarah? Hiding from your biggest fan?" Victoria purred, tapping a long, blood-red nail against the crisp envelope. "Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you. In fact, I have a little surprise." With a theatrical flourish, Victoria produced the envelope. It was thick, expensive paper stock, the kind that felt like money, sealed with an ostentatious gold foil crest. It was a harbinger from a world Sarah was not even allowed to look at, let alone enter. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Every nerve ending in her body screamed, "Trap." This wasn't kindness. This was ammunition. Victoria shot a conspiratorial grin back at her friends, a lioness toying with a wounded gazelle. She extended the envelope with a flick of her wrist. "Here. For you. It's an invitation. Marcus and I are finally tying the knot. This Saturday. The Grand Redwood Manor." She enunciated every word with relish, stretching out the syllables as if savoring the cruelty. "And guess what? You're on the guest list." Her friends could no longer contain themselves. One let out a choked snort, quickly disguised as a cough. The other just giggled outright. "I mean, it's the wedding of the year. Not just anyone gets an invite, right, girls?" Victoria added, winking at them over Sarah's bowed head. For a long, dizzying moment, Sarah was frozen. The words bounced around in her skull, refusing to form a coherent thought. An invitation. To their wedding. She looked from the impossibly elegant envelope to Victoria's gleeful, merciless eyes, and in their depths she saw the truth laid bare. This wasn't a peace offering. It was a declaration of war. A public execution disguised in calligraphy and gold leaf. "Oh, and feel free to wear whatever it is you people wear." Victoria's smile widened into a full-blown sneer. She gestured dismissively at Sarah's drab gray janitor's uniform. "Just try not to get mistaken for the help. It would be so embarrassing for everyone." "Or maybe she could give the catering staff a hand clearing the tables after dinner," one of her friends shrieked, and the three of them erupted into a fresh wave of cruel, echoing laughter. Sarah clutched the envelope, the sharp corners digging into her palm. A hot, suffocating wave of shame washed over her, so intense it felt like drowning. Her chest was a knot of fire and ice. But she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even look up. In a voice that was barely a whisper, yet carried the weight of 1,000 silent battles, she said one word. "Thank you." Victoria blinked, momentarily thrown. The simple, quiet dignity of the response was not the reaction she had engineered. "Oh," she stammered, recovering quickly. "How sweet. You're welcome." She and her friends strutted away, their laughter trailing behind them like the stench of cheap perfume. Sarah stood motionless, clutching the envelope to her chest. And for the first time in a very long time, she felt a tectonic shift deep within her soul. It wasn't just sadness. It wasn't just rage. It was the slow, dangerous awakening of a sleeping giant. Back in the quiet solitude of the janitor's closet, Sarah stared at the invitation as if it were a venomous snake poised to strike. The paper was impossibly thick, the gold lettering shimmering under the single, flickering fluorescent bulb. You are cordially invited to celebrate the union of Victoria Davenport and Marcus Thorne. Saturday at 5 o'clock. The Grand Redwood Manor. Black tie attire, black tie. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of it. As if she, a woman who bought her work shoes from a discount store, owned a ball gown. As if she had anything in her cramped closet that even approached the world they inhabited. She knew exactly what this was. A meticulously planned social ambush. They didn't want her there as a guest. They wanted her there as the punchline. The Grand Redwood Manor wasn't just a venue. It was a symbol. A sprawling, historic estate nestled in the hills, where the 1% went to celebrate their immunity from the real world. A place where a woman like Sarah wouldn't even be allowed to deliver a package, let alone walk through the front doors. High above, on a private terrace on the 50th floor, Victoria sipped champagne, watching the tiny figure of Sarah crossing the lobby far below. "Do you honestly think she'll show up?" one of her friends asked, a thrill of anticipation in her voice. Victoria let out a low, throaty laugh. "God, I hope so. It'll be the highlight of the entire reception. I can't wait to see the look on my aunt's face when Marcus Thorne's cleaning lady waltzes in thinking she's one of us." She took another sip, a cruel smirk on her lips. Honestly, what would she even wear? Her uniform? Down below, the debate raged within Sarah. Shame and fury were locked in a death match. A voice screamed at her to tear the invitation into 1,000 pieces, to throw it in the incinerator and pretend this whole, humiliating episode never happened. But as she caught her reflection in the polished glass of the lobby doors, something else took hold. She saw the exhaustion etched around her eyes, the drabness of her uniform, the hands that were chapped and sore from years of thankless labor. They think I'm nothing, she thought, the realization hitting her with the force of a physical blow. They see this uniform, and they think it's all I am. They think I don't matter. Her grip on the envelope tightened, her jaw setting like concrete. And in a voice barely audible, a promise whispered to her own reflection. She said, "Maybe it's time I remind them who the hell I am." The 3 flights of stairs to her tiny apartment felt like climbing a mountain. The elevator in her building had been busted for months, a constant reminder of the world she lived in, a world of perpetual neglect. She unlocked the door, and the familiar smell of old books and lemon-scented cleaner greeted her, a scent that was both a comfort and a cage. She tossed her worn bag onto the threadbare armchair, sank onto the edge of her bed, and for the first time since Victoria had placed that cursed envelope in her hand, she let the dam break. The tears weren't just for today. They were for the years of being invisible, of being spoken to like a child, of being treated like a piece of furniture that occasionally moved. She cried for the humiliation, for the cruel, mocking laughter that still echoed in her ears. She ran a trembling finger over the embossed gold lettering, half wishing she could melt it with her touch. Her mind was a war zone. If I go, I'm walking right into their trap. I'll be the circus freak they all came to see. But if I don't go, if I stay here and hide, I'm letting them win. I'm admitting that they're right. That I don't belong. Her gaze drifted to a dusty, crooked picture frame on her nightstand. It held a faded photograph of her mother, a woman with a luminous smile and eyes that held the wisdom of the ages. Her mother, who had always taught her that dignity wasn't something you wore like a coat. It was something you were. Dignity, her mother used to say, is the armor you forge for yourself. No one can give it to you, and no one can take it away unless you let them. And then, like a floodgate opening, a memory rushed in. A memory from a life she had buried so deep she had almost convinced herself it was a dream. Because Sarah hadn't always been a janitor. From the top shelf of her closet, tucked away behind old blankets, she pulled down a heavy cedar box. Her hands, calloused from work, trembled as she unlatched the lid. The scent of old paper and perfume rose up to meet her. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a life she had forgotten. Faded photographs, but not of this life. They showed a different Sarah. A woman with fire in her eyes, radiant and confident, dressed in elegant business attire. Pictures of her speaking at podiums, cutting ribbons at community centers, standing shoulder to shoulder with mayors and philanthropists. Tucked beneath the photos was a framed certificate, its edges soft with age. The name on it was bold and clear: Sarah Donovan, founder and executive director, the Donovan Initiative. Her fingers traced the elegant script of her own signature. For a breathtaking moment, the air left her lungs. That was her. Her father had been a self-made real estate developer, a pillar of the community who built his empire, not by tearing things down, but by building people up. He created affordable housing, funded scholarships, and fought for his neighborhood with a fierce love. Her mother had been a beloved professor, a woman who wielded knowledge and compassion like twin swords. Sarah had been raised on a diet of purpose, pride, and public service. She had graduated top of her class, built the Donovan Initiative from the ground up, an organization that had helped thousands of at-risk youths find their footing, get an education, and build a future. Her name had meant something. It had meant hope, until the betrayal. A trusted partner, a man she had considered family, had embezzled everything. He had used her name, her reputation, to cover his tracks. The scandal was a media firestorm. There were legal battles that drained every last penny, a brutal bankruptcy, and the crushing shame of public disgrace. The stress of it all had broken her parents. They passed away within 6 months of each other, leaving her utterly alone in the wreckage of her life. She lost it all: her home, her career, her good name. All that was left was the brutal day-to-day business of survival. And sometimes surviving meant disappearing. It meant becoming a ghost. But staring at that confident woman in the photographs, a forgotten spark ignited in the deepest corners of her soul. They see a janitor, she thought, her eyes hardening. They see a tired, middle-aged woman in a cheap uniform. A slow, dangerous smile touched her lips. They have no idea who they just picked a fight with. At the very bottom of the box lay one last item: a single, folded letter. She knew the handwriting instantly. It was from Chloe, her best friend from her former life. A brilliant, fearless fashion designer who had moved to Paris years ago, but had made her promise one thing before she left. It doesn't matter what time it is or what you need. If you ever decide it's time to fight back, you call me. I'll be on the next flight. Sarah stared at her cheap, cracked smartphone. Her thumb hovered over Chloe's contact, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. With a deep, steadying breath, she pressed the call button. The line rang, an ocean away. Once, twice. Then a voice, husky with sleep but sharp as ever, crackled to life. "Hello? Chloe?" Sarah's voice was thick with unshed tears. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Sarah? Oh my God. Is it really you?" Sarah closed her eyes, a single tear tracing a path through the dust on her cheek. "It's me, Chloe. I need you. I think it's time to remind this city who I am." The next morning, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb outside Sarah's run-down apartment building, looking as out of place as a spaceship. The back door swung open, and Chloe emerged. She was a vision of Parisian chic and New York power. A tailored black suit, razor-sharp stilettos, and oversized sunglasses that hid none of the fierce intelligence in her eyes. She spotted Sarah standing by the entrance, and for a moment, her composed facade cracked. "Oh, honey," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion as she wrapped Sarah in a hug that felt like coming home. It wasn't a hug of pity, it was a hug of reinforcement, of solidarity. Sarah clung to her, the years of isolation melting away in that one embrace. "I didn't know who else to call," she choked out. "I'm tired of hiding." Chloe pulled back, her hands framing Sarah's face. Her voice was soft, but the words were forged from steel. "You didn't call for help, Sarah. You called for backup. Now let's go upstairs and plan our goddamn war." Inside the tiny apartment, they spread the contents of the cedar box across the small kitchen table. It was a war room. The photographs, the articles, the old foundation brochures, they were their ammunition. Chloe opened her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Okay, Donovan, talk to me," she said, her eyes blazing. "When you walk into that wedding, what do you want them to see?" Sarah looked at the picture of the radiant, confident woman who shared her name. She met Chloe's gaze in the reflection of the laptop screen. "I want them to see the woman they thought they destroyed." A slow, predatory smile spread across Chloe's face. "Oh, that I can do." She started sketching furiously on a digital tablet, her stylus moving with a surgeon's precision. "I'm thinking power. Not frills, not glitter, pure, unapologetic power. Structured, architectural, regal. We're not dressing you for a wedding. We're dressing you for a coronation." "Chloe, I can't afford—" Sarah began, but Chloe cut her off with a sharp wave of her hand. "Don't you dare finish that sentence. You don't pay me for this. This is an investment in the restoration of a masterpiece. This is for every woman who has ever been underestimated." For the next several hours, the tiny apartment was transformed into a high-fashion command center. Chloe coordinated everything with ruthless efficiency. A couture gown, expressed from her atelier in Paris, jewelry loaned from a private collection in Geneva, a hair and makeup team that worked with A-list celebrities, all rerouted to Sarah's apartment as if it were a matter of national security. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room, Chloe took Sarah's hands in hers. She looked her dead in the eye, her expression deadly serious. "When you walk through those doors on Saturday, they won't see a janitor. They won't see a victim. They are going to see a queen reclaiming her throne, and they are going to choke on their champagne." Sarah looked at her reflection, but for the first time, she didn't see the tired woman in the gray uniform. She saw the ghost of Sarah Donovan, stepping out of the shadows, ready for her resurrection. What do you think is going through Victoria's mind right now? Let me know your most creative, savage thoughts in the comments. And if you're getting chills like I am, hit that like button. You're going to want to be here for this next part. The day of the wedding dawned with an almost insulting perfection. The sky over the California hills was a flawless, cinematic blue. The grand redwood manor stood like a monument to obscene wealth, its sprawling lawns manicured to within an inch of their life. Bentleys, Aston Martins, and a fleet of black Escalades disgorged guests dripping in diamonds and couture. Women in gowns that cost more than a teacher's annual salary glided across the flagstone terrace, while men in bespoke tuxedos clinked glasses of champagne that cost $1,000 a bottle. At the center of it all, a goddess in white, stood Victoria. Her smile was blinding, her posture perfect, as she soaked in the adoration and the flashbulbs like a flower soaking in the sun. "This day is going to be absolutely perfect," she murmured to Marcus, who stood beside her, looking bored and distracted as he scrolled through emails on his phone. Did you ever find out if your little charity project is coming? One of Victoria's bridesmaids whispered conspiratorially. Victoria let out a tinkling, condescending laugh. Please, as if. That woman knows her place. She wouldn't dare show her face here. But just as the words left her mouth, a single, unfamiliar car broke the procession of ultra-luxury vehicles. A sleek, black Audi, utterly devoid of ostentation, pulled silently to a stop at the end of the long, red-carpeted walkway. The valet, momentarily confused, hesitated. Then the back door opened. First, a shoe, a single black stiletto, impossibly high, elegant in its brutal simplicity. Then, a leg, followed by the whisper of silk as a figure emerged from the car. The dress was a masterpiece of understated warfare, a floor-length column of the deepest, richest black silk that seemed to drink the very light around it. It had no sequins, no lace, no frills. Its power was in its cut, a sharp, architectural silhouette with structured shoulders, a cinched waist, and a dramatic, sweeping train that pooled on the ground like liquid shadow. Her hair was swept up into an elegant, regal chignon. Her only jewelry was a pair of simple, diamond stud earrings and a single, breathtaking necklace, a thick, silver chain holding a raw, uncut black diamond. And her face, it was a mask of calm, cold, beautiful fury. There was no fear in her eyes, no shame, only a quiet, terrifying confidence that said, I am here, and I am not the one who should be afraid. It was Sarah. A hush fell over the terrace. Conversations faltered and died. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. The string quartet, playing Vivaldi, trailed off one by one until only a single confused violin remained. The photographers, sensing the shift in energy, lowered their cameras from the bride and groom and slowly turned their lenses toward the woman who had just arrived. Victoria felt the change in the atmosphere before she saw it. The air grew heavy, charged. She turned, her perfect smile faltering as her eyes fell upon Sarah. For one long, silent, heart-stopping moment, the world stopped turning. Victoria's champagne flute tilted in her hand, spilling the bubbling liquid onto the pristine white runner. Her mouth fell open, but no sound came out. The carefully constructed mask of the perfect bride shattered, revealing the panicked, ugly snarl beneath. The joke, her brilliant, hilarious joke, was suddenly, horribly, not funny at all. Sarah began to walk. Each step was slow, deliberate, a drumbeat of destiny on the marble walkway. Her dress flowed around her not like fabric, but like power itself. The whispers started then, rippling through the crowd like a shockwave. My God, who is that? Someone breathed. Is she an actress? A model? Another guest murmured. I've never seen anyone with that kind of presence. Marcus Thorne, who had been oblivious to everything but his phone, finally looked up. He froze. His eyes, accustomed to seeing Sarah as a blurry figure in gray, now saw her in high definition. He watched, his jaw slack, as this vision of power and elegance glided toward them, and a flicker of something, confusion, then intrigue, then undeniable admiration, crossed his face. Victoria felt the ground give way beneath her. The blood drained from her face, leaving her makeup looking garish and clown-like. She took a stumbling step backward, clutching her bouquet of white roses like a shield. No, she hissed under her breath, a mantra of denial. No, 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 no. Sarah reached the heart of the terrace and stopped. She didn't look for anyone, didn't seek out a single face. She simply stood there, an island of stillness in a sea of chaos, and let them look. She was the storm, and they were all just caught in her wake. Victoria, shaking with a mixture of rage and terror, finally found her voice. She stalked toward Sarah, forcing her lips into a grotesque parody of a smile. Sarah, What a surprise. I honestly didn't think you'd make it." Her voice was a thin, brittle thing, laced with undisguised venom. "You certainly cleaned up well." Sarah tilted her head, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips, a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Victoria, you did too." Her gaze swept over Victoria's extravagant, diamond-encrusted gown. "It's amazing what $1 million can do. Pity it can't buy class." A collective gasp sucked the air from the terrace. A few people choked back nervous laughter. Victoria's face went from pale to a blotchy, furious scarlet. She looked around wildly, desperately seeking an ally, but all she saw were wide, shocked eyes, all fixed on the janitor who had just verbally annihilated her. "How dare you!" Victoria shrieked, her voice cracking. "Who do you think you are, coming here and—" But before she could finish, an older man in a finely tailored tuxedo stepped forward from the crowd. He was Harrison Shaw, a legendary venture capitalist and one of the city's most respected philanthropists. He squinted at Sarah, his head tilted. Recognition slowly dawned in his eyes, followed by utter disbelief. "My God," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. He took a tentative step forward. "Forgive me, but are you Sarah Donovan?" The entire venue fell into a dead, profound silence. Every eye was on Sarah. Slowly she turned her head to face the old man. Her voice, when she spoke, wasn't loud, but it carried across the terrace with the clarity of a bell. "Yes, Mr. Shaw, I am." The man staggered back as if he'd been physically struck. He put a hand to his heart. "Donovan, as in the Donovan Initiative, I served on the board with your father. You were a force of nature, a prodigy. We all thought you'd change the world. What happened? Where have you been?" The whispers erupted again, but this time they were different. Not of curiosity, but of dawning, horrified realization. "Donovan. The Donovan Initiative. That's her? No, it can't be." Victoria's knees felt weak. The blood was pounding in her ears. The name hit her like a freight train. She had heard her father and Marcus talk about the Donovan Initiative, about the legendary family that had practically built the city's philanthropic backbone before their tragic fall from grace. She had tried to humiliate a legacy. She had picked a fight with a ghost who was more respected in her absence than Victoria had ever been in her life. She stumbled backward, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. "No, it's not possible," she muttered, her eyes wide and vacant. The crowd was no longer looking at her. The bride, the center of the universe, had become an irrelevant, embarrassing footnote. Harrison Shaw stepped forward again, his eyes shining with unshed tears as he took Sarah's hand. "Your father was a giant in this city, a man of integrity. And your mother? She was grace personified. We never knew what became of you after everything." Sarah squeezed his hand, her composure unwavering. "Life has a way of taking you on unexpected journeys, Harrison, but it never takes away who you are." Marcus, standing frozen beside Victoria, finally understood. He turned to his fiancée, his expression a thundercloud of fury and disgust. "Victoria, what the hell did you do?" His voice was a low, dangerous growl. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish. It was a joke, Marcus. Just a stupid joke," she stammered, her eyes darting around for an escape. "A joke?" Marcus's voice was ice. "You used our wedding to try and humiliate a woman whose family has done more for this city than everyone in your vapid social circle combined?" Sarah held up a hand. Her voice cut through the tension, calm and commanding. "Please, there's no need for that. I didn't come here for revenge. I didn't come here to ruin anyone's wedding." Her gaze found Victoria's and held it, sharp and unforgiving as a shard of glass. I came here to deliver a message. To you, and to everyone here. Dignity is not determined by the size of your bank account or the label on your dress. It's about how you treat people when you think no one is watching. Silence. Then, from the back of the crowd, a single person began to clap, then another, and another. Within seconds, the entire terrace erupted in a thunderous, sustained ovation. They weren't clapping for a show. They were clapping for a truth they had all, in their own ways, forgotten. It was too much for Victoria. With a choked, animalistic sob, she threw her $1,000 bouquet to the ground, turned, and fled. She shoved past her own guests, her white dress a blur as she ran from the garden, from the wedding, from the catastrophic humiliation she had engineered for another, but had ultimately inflicted upon herself. Sarah closed her eyes for a brief moment, breathing in the chaos and the applause. Today, she hadn't just crashed a wedding. She had taken back her name. The applause slowly faded, but a new energy remained in the air. A palpable sense of awe and shame. Faces that had been arrogant and dismissive just an hour ago were now humbled, thoughtful. Marcus stood rooted to the spot, the remnants of his shattered wedding scattered around him. He looked at Sarah, truly looked at her for the first time, and saw not the janitor, but the leader she was born to be. "Ms. Donovan?" His voice was strained, thick with regret. I am so profoundly sorry. I had no idea." Sarah met his gaze, not with anger, but with a weary, profound wisdom. "No," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "You didn't know my name, but you knew I was a human being. That should have been enough." She didn't say it as an accusation, but as a simple statement of fact, which made it all the more powerful. She let her eyes travel over the assembled guests, the titans of industry, the mavens of finance. "I came here for myself tonight, but maybe I also came here for them." She gestured subtly toward the catering staff who were frozen in place, the valets standing by the cars, the security guards at the perimeter. The other ghosts. The people you look past every single day. The ones who clean your offices, serve your food, and park your cars. Their stories are just as important as yours. Their dignity is not a commodity. The weight of her words settled over the crowd, heavy and uncomfortable. Guests shifted on their feet, their gazes dropping to the floor. For the first time, many of them saw the army of invisible people who made their luxurious lives possible. Then, something incredible happened. A well-known tech CEO stepped forward. "Ms. Donovan," he said, his voice clear and resolute, "if you ever decide to relaunch the Donovan Initiative, my company will provide the first $1 million in seed funding. And mine will provide the legal services pro bono." A woman, a top lawyer in the city, added immediately. One by one, others stepped forward, pledging support, offering resources, wanting to be a part of the resurrection they had just witnessed. A slow, genuine smile finally broke through Sarah's composure, and it was like the sun coming out from behind the clouds. Tears welled in her eyes. But these were not tears of shame or anger. They were tears of hope. "Maybe," she whispered, her gaze drifting toward the darkening sky, a silent thank you to the parents who had taught her to be unbreakable. "Maybe it is time." As she turned to leave, the crowd didn't just watch her go. They parted for her, creating a clear path, an honor guard for the queen who had just reclaimed her kingdom without firing a single shot. Leaning against the black Audi at the bottom of the drive, arms crossed, was Chloe. A wide, triumphant grin was plastered across her face. "So," she said, her eyes sparkling with pride, "did you make your point?" Sarah paused and looked back one last time at the glittering facade of the manor, at the beautiful, empty spectacle she had just disrupted. She took a deep breath, a breath that tasted of freedom and new beginnings. "No," she said, her voice ringing with newfound power. "That wasn't the point. That was the opening statement." Chloe let out a whoop of laughter and pulled her into a fierce hug. "Damn right it was," she said, squeezing her tight. "Now let's go build an empire so big they won't just remember your name. They'll carve it into the goddamn history books." As the car pulled away, leaving the wreckage of Victoria's perfect day behind, Sarah stared out the window. The reflection looking back at her wasn't a janitor. It wasn't a victim. It wasn't a ghost. It was a woman who had walked through hell and had come back carrying the crown she had forged for herself in the flames. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of resilience and the importance of seeing the humanity in everyone, then please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We share stories that matter, stories that remind us of the strength we all carry within. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that their crown might be invisible, but it's never, ever gone. Thank you for watching.